This morning, there was a graph that comes out of an ECFR poll from November 2024 that looks at the publics of a number of countries, asking them whether they think Trump's election is a good or a bad thing for your country. And South Korea comes in as the most negative on this, with only 11% of folks thinking it's a good thing and 67 thinking it's bad. The UK comes in at about 15% thinking it's a good thing, and it's quite interesting to see China at something like 46%. And then Saudi Arabia at 61, and India all the way up there at a whopping 84% of Indians thinking Trump's election as a US president is a good thing for your country. There's been a drumbeat of reports over the last 3 months of Delhi being the one place that people are a bit relaxed about Trump being in charge. It's worth noting that a number of American allies had their foreign ministers at the swearing in, but India, which is not an American ally, although a partner on a number of things, the foreign minister S. Jaishankar was in the front row at the inauguration. So there's a broad sense in India that things could be quite good for them. I think the thing that people don't necessarily see if you're not paying close attention to foreign policy is that Trump is scariest for his own allies, or for America's allies, so to speak. It's them that he shakes down the most in terms of doing deal making. It's like you have a smaller slice of the overall pie, and he's going to take more of that rather than pushing back any adversary. So India, in a sense, choosing not to be an official ally of the US and instead play partner to Trump's plans on various other things, has given at least the the Indian government reason to be less worried. At the same time, we immediately got a sense of the transactional nature of how these things are going to play out. India had been labeled by the immigration or ICE, whatever the full form is in the States, as an uncooperative in dealing with accepting deported, undocumented migrants, of which there are at least about 20,000 that the US has identified. And within minutes of the inauguration, word came out of the Indian government that it is planning to work with Trump on accepting these people coming back. And so the sense of this being a deeply transactional government has been made very, very clear. I'll just note one thing, that while Indians may profess a lot of comfort and relative hope compared to a lot of American allies, the Indian stock markets did tank yesterday, and the reasons for this are complex, not amongst which is the US dollar just becoming more and more strong, and the sense that if America cuts itself off to Chinese imports, that India could be the site of a lot of dumping of Chinese exports. So there's a number of things that could go wrong. But yes, it's true. I think by and large, for complex reasons of Trump turning fire on stalwart American allies like Canada, that India, just like you said, Tom, is not first in the line of fire, at least.
I wanted to ask you about that poll, because it was really striking just how far India is an outlier compared to others. And you've given some really good reasons why sort of Indian elite discourse, the Indian government might be more relaxed about Trump than some other countries, and it all makes a lot of sense. But those numbers are so striking that I wondered whether there's a bigger story to be told about the way in which Trump is portrayed in sort of popular culture in India as a more positive figure than perhaps, I mean, he's not a positively portrayed figure in broader UK popular culture, for what it's worth. But is it just different in India? People are clearly familiar enough with him to have an opinion, and that opinion is really positive?
Yeah, it's hard to say, because I think if you go around certain sections of elite culture in India, it's the same response of him being sort of both a maverick who'll say anything and also like destroying the international structures and so on. You'll find sections of that opinion in Delhi elite circles. But two things I'll point out. One, of course, the sense of him being a successful businessman is strong, and the repudiations thereof have not really made it to India. So there is just a general sense, as I think there is in a lot of America and other parts of the world, outside of those who are reading the news every day, that Trump is a deeply successful businessman, and so that has lent itself to his popularity. The other side is deliberate efforts from the Indian government and the current right wing establishment to be critical of Democrats. I mean, on the one side, Democrats have always had a poor relationship with India, in part because of their preference for working with Pakistan. There's a complex thing here, but the other side is not.
Although that was not, I mean, that actually hasn't been true for recent Democratic administrations. But I understand that these things have long memories and long tails.
Yeah, exactly. There's inertia there, but also there's that whole idea that the Democrats will lecture you, and the Republicans will not. And of course, there's overlap on the majoritarian anti-Muslim, critical of the Arab world. That side of things is quite. There's a lot of overlap there. There's an interesting point of potential conflict that we could get into on the question of skilled immigration and H-1Bs, and Indian Americans in general. But yeah, the big picture question is that Trump also will help on taking on China. Now, I think this was a note that, at least among elite discourse, that I heard a little bit in Delhi. There's a downside fear that Trump's transactional nature could lead him to go out and make a deal with China, and that will leave India properly out in the cold. It happened with Obama right ahead of Paris, when the U.S. and China decided that they'll do the deal 1 to 1, and that left a lot of what was then believed to be global South countries with a lot less leverage to push concessions from the developed world, and that remains a risk, although it's probably unlikely immediately.
I would just say two things. One is that, and the only reason that I'm stressing this is because I think it's not really understood by some Americans or by some Indians, just my own conversational experience. While India or Indians in India vastly prefer Trump or overwhelmingly think that Trump will be good, Indian Americans, at least at present, are one of the most democratic voting blocs. So I think it's important not to assume that the diaspora has the same position as those in country, which is not surprising. Like, we live here.